Hi, this is Gary Pope from Late to the Table. In this episode, we're going to be talking about ways to help you travel out to conventions. I thought this would be helpful because this is technically convention season right now, and also I used to have a travel job, so I know how to do things efficiently when it comes to traveling. Now, we're not going to go over the basic things such as like packing clothes and stuff like that, but we're going to go over some tips which you might not know about. So those things are going to be some travel gear. We're also going to be going over how to pack your games, and we're also going to be going over what are some of the best airlines for these kind of conventions. Now, when it comes to travel gear, there's only going to be one thing I'm going to really suggest, and that's going to be these packing cubes. Now, what makes these packing cubes so great is that you can actually fit in a ton of your clothes in these bags. When you put them in there, they fold up nice and neat in there. I would say it honestly saves you probably about 60% of the space in your bag, and that's being fairly conservative. When I used to travel all the time, these used to be super helpful because I could pack all of my clothes into one bag easily with space to spare. And then also when I get to my hotel room or wherever I was at, you can easily take these out, throw them in the drawer, and they're nice and organized. So it's perfect. Not only that, they're fairly cheap. If I'm not mistaken, they're roughly around 23 bucks, so it's not going to break the bank. Now, the next subject is going to be how to store your bags. Now, this one's a very crucial one because a lot of people try to put their boxes inside of their bag. They try to make that work, which it doesn't usually. So my tip is this: is leave the boxes at home in bags. Don't bring any boxes. Now, when you leave the boxes at home and if you use bags, you save a ton of space. Not only that, the bags you bring are more flexible than just about anything else you could put them in. And to save even more space for those bags, be sure to either get a hole puncher or use just a little knife and make a little hole in the bag. When you do that, it allows the air to release out of it, saving even more space. Okay, so now in this next subject, we're going to be talking about the airlines, and this is going to be going into a bit more details because there's a bit more information in this to spread. Just some notable things. I'm not going to be talking about certain policies, like the current politics, discussions, recent events, and also I'm not going to be talking about specific prices as well because those fluctuate between places to places. Now, just keep in mind that any bias that comes out of me is based off of the airports I'm flying out of, which is mostly the Boston, Connecticut, and New York airports. Make note that all the tips we're going to be talking about right now are based off of coach. They're not talking about first class, they're not talking about credit card plans, they're not talking about mileage plans, and also they're not talking about military plans as well. Just remember that if you are under any of those categories, be sure to do your own investigation. And also, please don't take all my information to heart. Everything I'm going to say is actually very subject to change, actually literally on a month-by-month basis. I was actually looking at a couple of flights and they were saying how their plans are going to change within the next 2 to 3 months. They didn't seem drastic, but they do change. And one last note, this is primarily about how to bring your bags from one place to another. Everything else takes backseat. Okay, so now that we got that little information out of the way, we're going to go over some guidelines that are going to be followed by just roughly about every single airline we're going to be talking about today. So first off, just about every single airline, their excessive baggage is considered 50 pounds or over, and they will not accept bags over 100 pounds. Also, another thing to note is that every single airline at least allows you to carry one personal item on it. And take this little bit of information with a grain of salt, but every single airline I've ever been on, they've never been picky enough to the point where your personal item isn't also considered a carry-on bag. There is a difference between the two. A carry-on bag is a bit bigger than a personal bag. But be warned, some people might not be so accepting of that, but I've never ran into that problem before. Also, if possible, be sure to bring all of your stuff into carry-ons if possible. It saves you a ton of time at the airport, it saves you a good amount of money, and not only that, it makes you a little bit more flexible when things happen, such as delays and other events. There's also rules about the size of the bags you can bring on carry-on and to check in. I've never seen an airport strictly enforce those rules just because most bags you check in or carry on usually fall within those guidelines anyways, but it's just something to make note of. Okay, so we're going to quickly go down this list of airlines and the perks that they have and everything. Alaska Airlines charges $25 for the first 2 bags, and then the third bag is $75, and they have an excessive fee of $50, and they only allow 1 carry-on bag. United Airlines seems to have a weird range of bag price range. I couldn't find any definite number, but it seems to be $0 to $50 for your first bag, and then $0 to $100 for your second bag. And also they have an excessive charge of $100 to $200. They do allow you to also bring in 1 personal bag and 1 carry-on bag, but if the carry-on bag is too big, they'll charge $25 at the gate. Virgin America has a weird policy where they charge $25 per bag no matter what and you could bring up to 10 bags, literally at that same $25 flat rate for each bag. And they only allow just one free carry-on bag. JetBlue charges $25 for the first bag, $35 for the second bag, and $100 for the third bag. The excessive fees on these bags are $100, and they also only allow you to have one carry-on bag. American Airline charges $25 for the first bag, $70 for the second bag, $150 for the third bag, and $200 for the fourth bag. They do allow you to have one free carry-on and one free personal bag as well. Southwest allows you to have 2 free checked-in bags, except I couldn't see any options for how much they charge for bags after that. And if you have excessive amount of bags, it's $75, so it's almost maybe safe to assume that that's the price. They also allow you to have one free personal bag and one free carry-on as well. Delta charges $50 for the first bag, $70 for the second bag, $150 for the third bag, and $200 for the fourth bag. And they have an excessive charge of $200 to $400. They also allow you to have one free carry-on and one free personal bag as well. Hawaiian Airlines allows you to pay $25 for the first bag, $35 for the second bag, and $100 for every bag after that. And they have an excessive charge of $100 to $200. I couldn't find any details on how many carry-ons you could bring, so I'm going to assume that they only allow you to have one personal bag. For Frontier, I couldn't find the exact price on their first bag price, but it looked like it was in the range of $25 to $35, $45 for the second bag, and then $75 for every bag after that. And they had an excessive charge of $75. Now, just to give you a heads up with Spirit, they have a large range of prices that their items can be, so I'm giving you a rough estimate. Their first bag is roughly around $40, their second bag is around $50, and every bag after that is roughly around $100. And they have an excessive charge of $30 to $150 depending on the weight. It looks like you also could bring on one personal item on the flight. Now, just make a note of Spirit, even though by far they've continuously have the cheapest prices on flights, they do charge you for literally everything you do. If you want to print your tickets at the airport at the kiosk, that's $2. If you want to print your tickets at the airport at the desk and use a human, that's $10. Do you want to drink and snack on your flight? That's $2. Do you want to pick your seat? That's going to charge you between $1 to $50. You can kind of see where I'm going with this in terms of how they charge things. Now, which flights am I going to suggest for this? Now, just bear in mind that it depends on you and how much your flight's going to cost from your area, and that price changes on a daily basis. So I'm mostly going off of the perks that you can get from these flights, so just keep that in mind. Now, the best bang for your buck that I've been able to see so far is by far Southwest. I like to think that most of us can get away with having 2 items that we could bring on the flight and also 2 check-in bags that could be way up to 50 pounds. So if you really need to bring a lot of stuff and you follow the tips I'm giving you, I bet you could fit easily 100 games in all of those bags and still have your clothes and still have space to spare. Now, the other airlines I'm going to suggest 3 of them. They're going to have their own specific scenarios for them. Now, the next 2 are going to be pretty solid if you see these at cheap ticket prices, and that's going to be United and Delta. Delta allows you to have 2 carry-on bags similar to Southwest, except we're not exactly sure on the whole pricing of their check-in bags, so if you can find good cheap prices on their checked-in bags, then they're a pretty good one to go with. It looks like they have the potential of having 2 free ones. And also Delta had some okay-ish prices with their checked-in bags, but they allow you to have 2 carry-on bags, so if they're a pretty cheap flight, that might be a good one to go with as well. And now the last one I'm going to go with is Virgin Airlines. Now, Virgin, if I'm not mistaken, I've never seen a cheap Virgin Airline flights, but I always hear that they're great flights. And the big thing to make note of is that you can have $25 per checked-in bag up to 10 bags, which, if you are someone who is, let's say, running a convention or going to a convention, bringing a lot of stuff, maybe you're a vendor or what have you, this could be the go-to option. Now, to put in perspective, to use the mailing system and to send something from Connecticut all the way to LA that weighs 50 pounds is going to cost you around $100. So if you're able to cut the price down to $25 per 50-pound bag that you're going to bring on a flight, that's saving you $75. And if you're going to be bringing 10 bags worth of stuff, that's going to save you roughly around $750. So if you could make up that $750 with the amount more that you'd be paying for your actual ticket, that could actually be worth it. Just make note that you are going to be that person at the airport that's lugging around 10 bags and you need a chauffeur and everything. But if you're going with a group of people, this actually could be a real possibility where you have one person go on Virgin and the other person goes on a cheaper flight, and you basically work yourself out in how you get out of the airport. So it looks like the biggest concern when you're doing it is literally getting out and into the airport. But after you figure that out, you're golden. So hopefully that was some useful tips for you guys. Even though it might be a little bit too late to get your plane tickets, it might be still helpful in terms of how to pack yourself and maybe help yourself out for later on in the year or next year. So this is Gary Pope from Late to the Table. Peace. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for watching Late to the Table. This episode is brought to you by my go-to place for upgrades and accessories for your favorite tabletop games, Top Shelf Gamer.